facts don't care about transphobes' feelings. Hey Spuds, it's Jamie, welcome back to another video, first video on the channel. I don't know, but welcome either way. I'm so glad that you clicked on this video and I hope you're gonna enjoy it, because today we're doing something that I really enjoy doing, but I've not done in a while because it takes a lot of prep and a long time to prepare for. That was just the same thing. Today we're going to be looking at a transphobic video where transphobes have tried to sound really clever, but they're not being clever. They're just lying, basically. And so I've gone through the video and I'm going to talk to you about why it's all false. So yeah, let's just get on with it. We're going to watch this video together. We're going to have a chat about it and I'm going to tell you why it's wrong. Yeah.
What are the dire consequences of the cultural norming of transgenderism?
Transgenderism is not a word. We're only 5 seconds in. I'm sure it can only get better.
Is the treatment of children who express confusion about their biological sex. At younger and younger ages, they are being encouraged to take part in what are called transition-affirming treatments that may be emotionally and physically damaging.
Eesh. Well, that roughly translates as trans and potentially trans kids are being allowed to explore their identities and supported in whatever path they may take using scientifically and medically supported methods. But I'm transphobic and I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm just gonna make up a bunch of shit to scare people.
And in some cases, irreversible.
No child is having irreversible treatment for being trans. When we talk about treatment for kids, as in like actual children below the age of 16, it's 90% social with a sprinkling of puberty blockers, both of which are reversible.
The evidence suggests that advocates of such treatments are more committed to a politically correct agenda than to science, or what is ultimately good for children.
One of the single most hypocritical sentences I've ever heard. All trans people and trans allies want is for trans people to be treated in ways that are scientifically proven to improve well-being and just generally have a positive effect on those involved. There is no political agenda. There's no transgender agenda other than the agenda for everybody to be comfortable and to be able to live as themselves, which I don't think is a bad thing.
Because when it comes to children, here are 3 key facts those promoting the transgender agenda ignore.
The transgender agenda. I knew that was going to come up. Please, please, I'm desperately waiting for an explanation of what the transgender agenda is. Come on.
Number 1. Despite what you often hear, scientific evidence shows people are not born trapped in the body of the wrong sex. If transgenderism were biological, then studies of identical twins should prove that. They
do though. They certainly provide evidence for the validity of being trans. They've either deliberately or accidentally misinterpreted what the research was actually saying.
But instead, they showed just the opposite.
That is a lie.
In a 2013 study of transgender twins, the largest of its kind, only 28% of the time did both identical twins who contain 100% of the same DNA and are exposed to the same prenatal hormones identify as transgender. That means that over 70% of the time, what contributed to one of the twins deciding they were the opposite sex of what they were born had nothing to do with biology. Okay, this just proves that transphobes, or the transphobes that created this video, just don't understand twin studies. I will have literally just cited this study moments before, a few minutes before, in this video. I think it's the same study, because they don't actually give a reference for it, but it sounds like the same study. And I use it as a citation that provides evidence for a biological basis of being trans, because the literal conclusion of the paper is the responses of our twins relative to their rearing, along with our findings regarding some of their experiences during childhood and adolescence, show their identity was much more influenced by their genetics than their rearing. We're not looking for a 100% likelihood of both identical twins being trans. What we're looking for is a higher percentage in identical twins than what we see in non-identical twins or non-twin siblings. And as the percentage in identical twins is larger than in non-identical twins, that is the evidence that we need. Let's also not ignore epigenetics and split placentas, which can both have an influence. So please, transphobes, stop making claims that the science just doesn't back up, and then trying to say that the science does back them up, because it really doesn't. Number 2. After passing through puberty, the majority of young children who originally expressed distress and confusion about their biological sex outgrew it. We're talking 75 to 95% of such children.
Again, I don't know specifically what study they're talking about because they don't cite it, but regardless, the finding of an 80% desistant rate when reaching puberty is something that is heavily disputed and criticised. It's really not as simple as that one stat. Also, it's more 45 to 88%, not 75 to 95%. And even the 45 to 88 are highly inflated compared to reality, which I am going to explain right now. There have been multiple critical commentaries over the years about this desistance rate and the conclusions that go along with it. The top line is, and the most important thing, is that the desistance rate that has supposedly been found is not recognised as a scientific rationale for discouraging kids to socially transition. These studies on desistance rates were longitudinal, meaning that there is a high dropout rate of participants. So you might start with 100 participants at the beginning, but then several years down the line you might only have 70 of those left. In these particular studies, that was the rough dropout rate, 25 to 30%. And in most cases, these 25 to 30% of participants who dropped out and who we have no idea what happened to them were actually just automatically counted as desisters. So they were put into that 80%. We have no idea if they actually desisted, but they increased the percentage rate regardless. That doesn't seem right. Secondly, many children, as high as 40% in some of these studies, did not even reach the criteria in childhood to have gender dysphoria. So technically they shouldn't have even been included in the studies in the first place. So they basically mixed in a bunch of kids. Some were trans and had gender dysphoria, and some were gender non-conforming and had some slight potential indications of gender dysphoria, but not enough to be diagnosed with it, and they lumped them all together, and then they basically looked at how many were still gender dysphoric at follow-up when a large chunk of them had never been gender dysphoric in the first place. There's also evidence in these studies that the kids who are gender dysphoric and the kids who are gender non-conforming show pre-puberty differences between their behaviours and their motives and their feelings that we can easily distinguish.
But with the widespread push to embrace and affirm transgenderism, perhaps it shouldn't be surprising that more children are questioning their gender.
By affirm gender and affirmative care, it just means letting kids express themselves how they feel comfortable. There's no forcing or pushing them into doing anything or behaving in any kind of way. Unlike reparative therapy, which is the opposite to affirmative, which pushes kids to align with their assigned birth sex in terms of what toys they play with, how they dress, how they behave, how they want to be referred to. That's where kids are pushed to be doing something they don't want to do. One method is very clearly in a kid's best interest and comfort, the affirmative method, and one is really pushing them down a road that could negatively affect them when they're older, the reparative therapy. And reparative therapy is basically conversion therapy, and we all know how horrendous that is.
In the United Kingdom, for example, a government-affiliated health service dealing in gender identity issues for those under the age of 18 experienced a 2,000% increase in patient referrals since 2009. For children under the age of 6, the referrals have increased by over 400%.
Funny that, huh? You know, the funny thing when something is more accessible, more talked about, more accepted, that more people realise that that's who they are, and more people feel comfortable telling others that that's who they are. The graph for the increase in referrals to gender clinics actually maps onto the graph of the increase of people who are left-handed, and both are related to a decrease in stigma. Trans people have been silenced, discriminated against, and stigmatised for so many years, and we're finally making a bit of progress in terms of acceptance and visibility, and transphobes twist that into a bad thing. Of course they do.
Number 3, medical treatments often used to treat children with gender dysphoria have not been proven safe. Serious questions remain, including whether such treatments may cause obesity and testicular cancer in males, and decreased bone and muscle growth and infertility in both sexes. No rigorous scientific studies exist to show the long-term physical or psychological effects of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormone treatments on normally developing children. None.
The only actual medical treatment that would be available to kids under 16 would be puberty blockers. No hormones, and then no surgery for kids at all. Puberty blockers have been used to treat precocious, early onset puberty for a long time. But now that it's trans kids that are being helped with it, oh no, suddenly they're dangerous and we do not know enough about them. What we do know about puberty blockers so far is they have been used in this way in terms of stopping, pausing puberty since the 1990s. So they're hardly experimental anymore, and trans kids who have access to puberty blockers show an increase in their well-being. And the potential negative physical impact of them is unproven. Then just flipping back to the use of them again in precocious puberty. Based on long-term follow-up studies, the use of puberty blockers has been deemed effective and safe. So we're not void of long-term studies. If people want to do more, then great, it's always good to have more. But we can already see that overall they are safe to use in children, and they have been used for many, many years. It's just suddenly become an issue now that they're helping trans kids. Also, just referencing back to the desistance rates found, in studies of trans kids who took puberty blockers, every single one of them went on to start hormone therapy when they were old enough.
The rush by the media, cultural elites, and politically correct medical organizations to normalize and embrace transgenderism has no time for fact-finding.
Facts have been found. I have presented just a tiny slither of them in this video. Transphobes ignore them and then make up their own, which aren't facts, they're just lies.
So much for science, and so much for having the best interest of children at heart. Parents, beware.
Parents, beware. They're literally describing themselves at the end. This can't get any more frustrating. I can only take solace in the fact that I know objectively that they are wrong, and that facts don't care about transphobes' feelings. But it's still annoying that they just put such bullshit out into the world and people believe it. Once something's said, it can be a lie, it can be based on absolutely nothing, no evidence, but if somebody says it and that gets enough traction, it's so difficult to take it back. It's impossible, actually. It takes a million times more effort to disprove a lie somebody said than to put the lie out there in the first place. Anyway, that's it for today. I thought it was time to go through and debunk another transphobic video and more transphobic arguments. I hope you enjoyed it. In reality, all the points they made and everything they referenced just proves that they have no leg to stand on, and they have no actual scientific support for their claims. That's one positive to take from the frustration. Do let me know what you think about this video. Do let me know if you like these kinds of videos from me and if you find them useful and helpful. If you like this video, think about giving it a thumbs up and subscribing, but no pressure. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye! Oh, and thank you so much for watching. I forgot to say that. Goodbye!